Okay, so we know that you're making a documentary about, or you've made now a documentary about Eurovision, but what's the exact angle that you've been taking on it?
Well, there's been quite a few documentaries made about Eurovision, so we wanted to do something a little bit different to the usual kind of funny clip shows about Eurovision. So our kind of premise was that we had a hunch that perhaps what happened on the revolving stages of Eurovision over the last 55 years has actually reflected a kind of wider political history of post-war Europe. So Eurovision began in 1956, about 10 years after the Second World War, and Europe was in quite a bad state after the war. So this was an idea that somebody at the European Broadcasting Union, the EBU, had to try and promote a kind of harmony around Europe and have nations all kind of getting together for the same reason, and to try and showcase the new technology of television, which had only just come in a couple of years before. So it was a way of kind of using this new technology to promote kind of nations and create a bit of kind of communication and understanding between countries that had been quite that hadn't really had an opportunity to do that in the past. And then we kind of discovered that Eurovision was kind of a bit of propaganda for the West during the Cold War, and the glitz and the glamour and the kind of showiness of it were all kind of encouraged and designed to to try and show that the West is best, and the communism in the East was very kind of miserable and grey, and everyone was downtrodden and they had no fun. And then we found that there were secret parties in Eastern Europe of people watching Eurovision illegally because they just loved the fun and the flamboyance of it.
Wow.
So our film is actually, for some broadcasters, it's actually 2 one-hour films, a mini-series. And the first episode is from 1956 up until 1989 and the fall of the Berlin Wall. Mm-hmm. And the second episode is then the whole kind of new Europe and the former Eastern Bloc countries all embracing Eurovision and becoming, really taking it really seriously and realizing that Eurovision is a platform for countries to be on the international stage, and for countries that often wouldn't get to the World Cup or wouldn't win Olympic medals in the Olympics, they might be able to use Eurovision as a kind of way of asserting their new identity, countries that have all been part of the former Soviet Union. So basically, the film overall is trying to, what I describe it as hiding the broccoli under the chips a bit. So you kind of learn a lot about the history of Europe whilst also enjoying kind of the silly songs that everyone knows Eurovision is famous for.
So you're based in Australia and your production company is based in Australia, which is obviously a long way away from Europe. Have you had a lot of travel involved in making the documentary?
Yeah, I did do a lot of travel because obviously we're making it out of Australia, and that seems quite strange. So I went over and filmed at the Oslo contest, the 2010 contest last year in Oslo, and I did that in May, and then I went in September. I did a whole kind of tour around Europe, and I went to 7 or 8 different countries to do my interviews with different people. Mm-hmm. And the scheduling of that was extremely complicated, of course, because I was on the road with a small crew of a cameraman and a sound recordist and myself, but quite a lot of equipment to set up the lights and everything for the nicely shot interviews that we did. So it took quite a lot of organising, and at the end of the day, I was interviewing a lot of artists who are often on tour themselves, musicians who have their own tours and things arranged. So I couldn't in the end do everyone at the same time, which is why I had to do some of them over Skype. Lena was obviously quite high on our list of possible interviewees because she won last year, and then of course she's defending her title in Dusseldorf this year. So she's kind of very much the modern face of Eurovision and the modern face of Germany. That was part of our story, that she was born after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and she doesn't care about the former the former divide between East Germany and West Germany. She's a brunette. She's not the typical kind of blonde German that people outside Germany associate with Germans. So she was a very good kind of symbol of this kind of new modern Germany and the new modern Eurovision. And her song, of course, was not typically Eurovision. So I just felt it was she was quite an important person to speak to. And she was very happy to speak to us as well, of course, and so were her managers. But it was just a scheduling problem. Meant that when we were in Germany filming Nicole and Johnny Logan, who now lives in Germany, we weren't able to fit Lena into our schedule. So we suggested to her manager that they get her, you know, when she is available, and we organise a kind of remotely organise an interview, which is how we got in touch with Camera Crew Germany and organised a crew and a camera and everything through you guys. And then I was just on Skype, and they managed to, you know, it actually worked quite well. They managed to put a laptop with my face coming on the Skype screen here at the right eye line for Lena, so she was actually talking to me, but I was on the computer screen. And it worked really well. So that was the first one we did, and so we did it 2 or 3 more times. I did it with Ruslana, who was the winner from 2004, the Ukrainian winner in 2004. So I interviewed Ruslana. She was in Kiev, and I was in Sydney, and then I did it with a couple of people in London as well. So it worked out really well and enabled me to get, you know, high quality interviews shot properly with the right questions and the right framing, but without me having to physically be there.
That's great. Is it something that you would recommend to other production companies?
Yeah, I would. I definitely would. I mean, of course, it's not as good as actually being there. It's never going to be quite as, you know, you don't have that intimacy, and you don't have quite the kind of control that you would have if you were there. But these days, it's the quality is good enough for you to be able to see. You know, they could point the Skype camera at the monitor so you can see exactly what the cameraman's framing, and the audio is perfectly good enough as well for you to hear the questions. It wouldn't work so well if you were wanting your questions on camera as well. But but with the documentaries that I make, I try and keep myself off camera. And I don't use my questions in the editing in the final version, so as far as possible. So if you don't need to do that, then yeah, it works really well, and I'd definitely recommend it again. And you need somebody like you guys who were able to kind of organise it and understood what we needed and could provide the camera and the Skype connection and you know, and all the equipment that we needed. But yeah, it was actually really satisfying. We were all really happy with it, and it was really cost effective too.
Great, and it's not too difficult to try and get the interviewee to open up to you when you're divided by this computer screen?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think for certain subject matters, it might be more difficult. I mean, it's definitely more difficult to have that rapport and to create that intimacy that you really benefit from when you're interviewing somebody. So I would say you have to think carefully about your subject matter. Now, I only really interviewed kind of performers and people who were very comfortable on camera and were comfortable being interviewed, and they were talking about their kind of artistic and music life. And someone like Lena, even though she's only 18 or 19, she'd already been interviewed so many times that she was quite comfortable in front of the camera, and because she was only 19, she'd used Skype a lot before. So for her, I don't think it was too difficult. But if I've done quite a few interviews in the past where you're really you've won the trust of that contributor, and that might have been created over several months of discussion, and you want to kind of maintain that intimacy and not betray that trust. I think that would be a lot more difficult over Skype.
Yeah, so if these technologies that everybody has at hand, like Skype and the mobile phone, for example, continue to develop at such a rapid pace, and the quality improves, then do you think that could take business away from companies like ours, for example, television production companies or camera crew companies who are offering that professional service?
I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, I really don't think that they're the same market. I think they're a very different market, and I think there's always going to be a demand for high quality production. And it's like people saying it's so easy now to shoot your own video and upload to YouTube and to edit on little kind of portable editing software, and that's true, it is, but there's no substitute for really high quality storytelling and high quality content. So it's going to be a case of horses for courses. If you're just a teenager and you're just watching 2-minute YouTube videos in your bedroom, that's one thing, but if you actually want to sit back after a hard day at work and watch a thought-provoking documentary or a high-quality entertainment show, then you're still going to expect that to be shot properly and for it to look really good on screen. It's very difficult, actually, to watch for any length of time, to watch low-quality and Skype videos. Like, it's fine on YouTube for a few minutes, but it's not so good to sit down and watch entire stories told like that. I think it's actually a more tiring experience for the viewer. So I don't think there's ever going to be a shortage of demand for high quality production or for high quality storytellers. I think, you know, the skills and the craft in using video to tell stories will always remain, and that will be the same for doing it, you know, doing it to a high level of visual production value as well.
Yeah, good to know. We agree.
Yeah, it's true.
Thanks so much for your time, Stephen. I really appreciate it, and it's been really fascinating talking to you.
Yeah, no problem, Kirsty.
And now you're going to be a Eurovision fan for life, no doubt.
I don't know about that, but we'll see. We'll see.